welcome to the Woman Weapon platform. You might be listening to this on Woman Weapon podcast or watching on Woman Weapon TV. I'm your host Rachel Eliza, and today I'm so excited because we're joined with a beautiful friend of mine, Amore O'Garro, who is a performer, and she's also featured on several podcasts recently, including the Forward Females podcast. So I'll link that below so you can check that out as well. And today we're going to be discussing some of the topics surrounding the Black Lives Matter movement. I've noticed since the death of George Floyd, there was a lot of energy surrounding it then, and now the energy's really got dissipated, and it's just, by people's Instagrams and social medias, they're going to go back to like kind of normal, but there's not any more fight, and I feel there's a lot of silence, and a lot of brands are only really participating now because they feel like they have to, like to help their image. Like now there's loads of fast fashion brands which are only now featuring like the black women who are models, and I'm just a bit like...
Naomi Campbell on her Instagram said that in her 34-year modelling career she was photographed by a black female for the first time ever for Vogue. So yeah.
No way. I think there's like brands which are only really using the movement to benefit them and like profit off of it. And I just think that's so not it. Like it's not about performing, it's not about making yourself look better, it's about actively being a part of the solution.
Yeah, massively.
How ways do you think that we can like move forward with the momentum of it? Obviously because, like I said, there was that energy, and now it's kind of like people aren't spending as much time doing their research maybe, or people aren't like doing their reading or having as many conversations. Like, what do you think people could do to carry forth that energy?
It's a hard one because I feel like with people's like social media and stuff, it doesn't have to all be via social media, because that does then sometimes blur into the lines of just performative, as if it's not actually genuine. But I mean, if you know actively that you're still signing petitions, you're trying to have conversation, it doesn't have to all be via social media, but social media is powerful. You can't forget that this isn't going to change. This is like 400 years of systemic oppression that we're trying to overthrow, and it's not as simple as that. Even Keir Starmer, who's the new Labour leader, said on Good Morning Britain that the Black Lives Matter movement is a current moment in history. I was like, this isn't a moment. This is carrying on. Like, it just showed how how disconnected he was to it, and the fact that he described it as a moment and then spoke just about America and its atrocities. And I'm like, yeah, but Britain literally held like a racist protest, being like actively and openly like free to express his opinions with no backlash type of thing. So I just think it shows how disconnected like specifically Britain is. And it's just them ones where it's a gradual change. Like, even they rejected the national curriculum, saying that it doesn't need to change. And that is fundamentally wrong, because it's like, of course, if kids are going to grow up only being taught about white history, of course, then
like people say, but it's not the school's responsibility, it's not like your friend's responsibility to keep having those conversations. I agree, it's not your black friend's responsibility. Like, you shouldn't have to put them through that emotional like labour just because you can't be bothered to go on Google. But it is education's responsibility. Like, if we're only being educated of ourselves, we're only going to think that life is about ourselves. Like, no wonder people are closed-minded, because they're like, oh, I didn't learn about this, it mustn't be important.
I think people don't realise how, like, even in modern times, it's just as real as it was 100 years ago, 50 years ago. Like, it's all the same thing. But it's a very difficult thing. It's more just kind of finding your way of kind of handling it, because like for us black people, or for like people of colour and BAME, if you like to use that term, this is our reality. That like I want to look back in 50 years and see actual change. So I'm gonna have to just keep doing it no matter what, and like the momentum's always up and down. Like it's a horrid waiting game of like, okay, so when's the next person? When's the next person? When's the next mad protest? When's the next wave of everyone going on Instagram and stuff? It's really just that's unfortunately the pattern of it. And I don't think a lot of people purposely treat it like a trend, but I think people don't realise that this isn't a trend, this is constant. And it's just the bleak reality. I think that's just how it is. Like, that, and there's nothing that we can do as the minority, because we rely on the majority for our voices to be heard. So it's one of them ones. It's really like a pendulum scale. It's kind of like this. So
I was thinking as you were saying that before you even said the word trend, I was like, that is, people only jump on it when they realise, like, oh, this is something that everyone's doing now, and like, oh, that is a trend. And even hashtagging the names of the people who've been killed at the hands of the police, you'll hashtag their name and then forget the name come the next morning. Like, don't just treat it as a trend, actually do your research, like, know their names and know their stories, because they're lives, they were lives, they have families, they had jobs, they've left behind people now who are in such grief and pain. It's like, don't treat it like just a hashtag. That's not cool. For sure.
And then even just like, as we were discussing, the whole diverting from the main problem. I feel like in the last couple of days I've seen the actress who plays, I think, a mixed race character in Big Mouth is stepping down. The I think it's a white male actor who plays Apu in Simpsons, he's stepping down. Like, all these things. I'm like, Simpsons been around for how many years? And it's just like, I obviously I can't speak for everyone. Personally, for me, I don't care about cartoon characters. They're not real. Like, this is not the time to find offence in every little thing. Like, we're talking about serious actions, including like changing the curriculum, defunding the police, like, you know, social and economic actual help and difference. Like, I promise you, we're not sitting here going like, change these cartoons or change these things. Like, there was a literal tweet about Hulu, which is like a TV provider for anyone who doesn't know that. Golden Girls, like a TV show way back like in the 80s. They have a scene where they have mud masks on, and they've taken the episode down due to the possibility of it being offensive to blackface. I was like, it's a mud mask. Like, it's a mud mask. I was like, what? It just gets to a point where I'm like, I promise you, the things that we're asking for are actual serious, substantial change. I don't care about cartoons. Like, it's always this thing where they try to divert and they try to find people to hate on the actual movement and the serious issues, because then it's blinded and sidetracked by silly little things. Like, no one is talking about all these random things coming into light, yet they always seem to be the things that crawl in. I'm like, that is just not a concept.
And I feel like it's kind of as well, people trying to be performative about it as well, like people who are trying to get a pat on the back and be like, oh, like, this is something that isn't really being spoken about, so I'm gonna sort of bring it up and make myself look great because I'm gonna step down, like you say, from some of those characters. And they're kind of, I don't know, I just feel like it's exactly that. You're diverting from, not saying that those aren't issues, but you're diverting from real pressing matters.
Yes. Even Jenna Marbles and Shane Dawson, if anyone knows those YouTubers, like, you know, Jenna Marbles was huge when I feel like at our age kind of group, like, we would have kind of got into the YouTube. And she's literally been like, I'm quitting YouTube, like, deleted all the videos. And obviously, political correctness has massively changed in probably, I'd say, the last decade. Like, you have to be very careful with things that you say, or that, you know, you learn from certain things that you know that you might have said that were offensive before, but now you realise, like, that you can't say this, etc., etc. And it just kind of gets to a point where it's like, yes, we can apologise for these things and they've been done, but it's like, why is it 10 years ago you thought it was okay, and now it's like, now it's hit you, especially with how, I guess, full on, like, Black Lives Matter especially has been in most recent times. Why is it there's all of a sudden now this remorse? Like, why is it now, down the line, years after you've been doing it this whole time, now that you, like, think, oh, maybe this is offensive? Like, blackface is nothing new. Blackface is from way back, like decades or even like hundreds of years ago. And it's just like, so why is it now that people want to speak up, and then we have all these articles about it, and it's like, no, we don't need to hear it. Just move on from that. I
think people know now is the time they're going to get considerable hate. So they're just backing themselves. Although it's like, exactly, when would that ever have been deemed okay? Something like blackface. In fact, I know a guy from my town. He had a Christmas party, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, and he rocked up in blackface. He's a white boy. I literally used to live next door to him. like we went to the same school, and he put it on Facebook, and then people obviously were reacting back on Facebook and on social media, and from my town that I come from, there's really a lack of diversity. There's hardly any people of colour at all. It's probably like literally 97% white people, but the few people who were of colour were the people who were actually like saying facts on their posts as to why this is wrong. And so that got shared, and then this boy who did this took down his Facebook. He went off grid, and I had a conversation with someone that I know, and we're having a bit of a debate about it, and she was saying, you know, whatever he did, it did not justify him getting attacked on social media. And I was just like, but he attacked on social media by doing up blackface and putting it on Facebook. How do you not expect the response to then be on the same platform that he's done it? Because it's like, otherwise it looks like it's just been brushed under the rug, and like that's been accepted. Don't do. Since when is that okay? I contacted the workplace. The workplace, they're a massive hotel, and it's, you know, a lot of like yummy mummies will go for their spa day like weekly, and I contacted them along with several others asking what was actually going to be done about this, and they said how there was going to be a mandatory like couple hour classes on privilege. And the guy actually was going to get no repercussions. And they claimed, you know, but we are the most diverse employer of the town. And I'm thinking, so you should actually be way more aware of the implications that this has for the people that you're employing. The people who feel like because they're the minority that they don't want to step up and stand up for themselves in the fear that everyone else is just going to be like, sit down. Do you know what I mean?
It's so stressful because I hate that racism is such a complex issue. Like, you would think that we could just say, you know, racism is wrong and move on from it, but people literally go, but there's always but, and then there's always the whole classic, you know, like, why is blackface offensive? But like, you know, let's say a movie like White Chicks, you know, that's like a very, very famous movie, and it's like, why isn't that offensive? And I'm like, well, if you look back at the Jim Crow laws and the way that black people have been treated then, when they couldn't even vote or they couldn't drink from the same water fountain, and even now with these supposed laws that they now have rights, like, you understand why the horrid history behind blackface is a thing. And then even now, like, have you seen 13th? Like, with the 13th Amendment?
It's on my list.
Anyone who hasn't seen it, I'd absolutely recommend watching 13th. But the 13th Amendment literally just went from slavery to criminal. Like, it just literally changed from being under as a slavery to now literally just being a criminal. And it's just so mind-blowing that there's always just so many discussions that have to be had, and I'm like, I don't understand why. That there has to be, and unfortunately that's just the world we live in. Like, everyone's going to agree to disagree on so many things, and it's, you know, unfortunate that racism seems to be one of those things that kind of fires up everyone. I don't personally agree with cancel culture. I think if we're talking about that stuff, cancel culture I think is very, very toxic. But
agreed,
but even in light of, you know, vocational colleges being called out, because I called out my vocational college, it's one of them ones where, you know, we've had meetings, etc., and they're saying that we're going to do this and we're going to implement that, and it's horrid because in my head I'm like, I've got to wait a whole year to see if this is serious. Because there's no point in starting if, you know, with Corona and everything, they go back to dance college and can train. But it's like, you actually have to wait a substantial amount of time to actually see if there's genuine change. Because, like, everyone can say all these things, even, like, Starbucks must have had the most energy for, like, 1 week of, like, Black Lives Matter, and then they said, any employer that comes in with a t-shirt, nope, couldn't work. And I was just like, performative, it's not cool.
You can tell, you know, time will tell how real people's intentions are with it, but that's sad. That is so sad. And I think what you were saying about vocational colleges, for those who aren't aware, like dance, performing arts schools, colleges, we trained at a performing arts school in London as well, so you'd think that the diversity would be, you know, good. It would
like
be
reflective of London.
London, the most diverse city in the country. But they're not. And without your video, what Amore did, she literally used examples as well. She didn't just like, you didn't tiptoe around it.
No,
you used examples, which was so needed, because without that, and then without considerable amount of people sharing it.
Oh,
including a very influential man in the industry who has like 36k followers.
Yeah.
Without that, they wouldn't have done the meeting. They wouldn't.
No.
And at the school, at the uni, at our uni, there's only been about 3 or 4 black teachers at one time, amongst a cohort of maybe like 30 teachers.
Yeah.
About. So if you're saying there's 3 out of 30 teachers, that's 10%.
And then if we're also getting into gender,
they're all men.
There's no females,
right. And my thing is, if that uni in particular cared about diversity, they already would have had a more diverse range of people that they employ.
Our principal said back in like the 80s and the 90s it was actually completely different. I'm like, so what's happened?
Yeah, so it looks like, what have you done now then?
Yeah,
like,
so
it's up to like you to make the changes.
Because I'm so like, so what has changed? How has it gotten less diverse? It's very bizarre to me. It's like, But yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, you're the director telling us this, then tell us why. Because how can you actually say that you have a care for this humanity issue? Yeah.
And then, but you're just going to watch it and then be passive and not actually do anything about it. Like, it just shows how privileged people are and how they won't even recognise the change and recognise that it's something that needs to be looked into. Yeah, it was one of the main like quotes I kept getting repeated from teachers in like the main meeting was kind of like, we're so shocked, like we never thought you'd experience this. And I'm like, I mean, it's just the reality. Like it was just kind of the shock behind it. I was like, I don't know why you're shocked, like this has literally just been my reality for 3 years. And then even having current students, as I've like just recently graduated, it's just that they even had literally parallel experiences to me. And I'm just like, I don't know why it's taken all of this kind of chaos basically to talk about these things and be like, this really has to happen, like this is a joke. And then I mean, I don't know, for fellow BAME people out there, I personally feel like I'm exhausted. It got to a point where, understandably, it got to a point where even like we were on our 3rd meeting about kind of how we're going to go about the committee, etc., and I was just like, I can't talk about it anymore. I was like, I'm just pipsqueak quiet at this point because I'm honestly just knackered. I'm just like, I don't know what more I can say. I've said my piece, and I'm like, you guys are running the show, like all the chairs, all the principal, etc. You guys are running the show. There's only so much I can do as a student. And like, I feel like my voice was powerful. Like I did have an impact, which is crazy. I never thought that the video I made would have had the amount of impact it had. But it's just them ones where I'm like, I'm only one human. I'm a young human. I'm trying to like prioritize my mental health, etc. And there's only so many times I can talk about the fact that I'm black. And just keep talking about that. Like the amount of times I've been reminded I'm black, I'm like, yep, I'm black. It's like what I said about like you can't rely on your black friends to be educating you. Yeah, then you'll put them through that emotional labour, that emotional stress, and that's the same thing for you. Like regardless of who's asking you the questions, or you know, it's labouring for you. It's massively. It's just the thing is, I've had no problem with some people messaging me, like people who've said ignorant stuff. They've apologized. It's fine. Move on from it. You said it. Whatever. And if you feel like you're not educated and you want to ask for like a source, like that's fine. Google is massive though, guys. You don't need to rely on your BAME friends to be like, this is not okay. And I sometimes think people do go to like the people who they know they've perhaps been ignorant to prove, like, to kind of clear their conscience. Exactly. And like again in a kind of performative sense, to be like, to show that they're actively trying to do better, which of course like we all got to try to do better as white people, particularly, obviously most importantly, white people have got to do better. But it does seem like those people who know that they've done wrong in the past will go to the likes of yourself or other people of colour to be like, oh, can you direct me where I can find exactly, just go on Google. Even with like political correctness, if you feel like in your head that you would say something that would be offensive, then don't say it. Like, don't ask people for approval, like, oh, is this okay? Like, if you think it's offensive, it probably is offensive, and there's no point kind of risking that. Like, just there's no point. Just don't bother. Just rub it under the rug, put it under the rug.
and just move from there.
Yeah. Some of those thoughts should really just stay in your head, and then if you come to the conclusion that you're questioning whether that's offensive or not, you need to really understand that it probably is, and then get to the root of, okay, and why do I believe this, or why did I even want to say that in the first place? I think something that was mentioned about one of the meetings that you were in was, I've spoken to a couple of people who were in that meeting. Someone in the meeting, it seemed that he was trying to make white people feel comfortable. I thought that's the opposite of what we need to be doing. Obviously I wasn't in the interview, so I don't know, that's just what I've been told. But white people need to be feeling uncomfy. Like, there's that video of the woman who, I don't know where she spoke, but it kind of went viral, and she was talking about, like, Karen behind
the
me.
white guy, I know the guy you're talking about.
Yeah, and she was like,
in America.
She's like, I'm sorry that you feel slightly uncomfy, but black people have had to endure this for like 400 years. And I was like, yes. I mean, that's exactly it. All the comments were like, I'm dead that she said uncomfy, but it's true. You're just uncomfortable because you realise, like, it's your people that did this. It's white people that did this. It's white people that need to step up and actually be a part of solving the problem instead of creating the issue even more than we already have.
I promise you, with the Black Lives Matter movement, like, especially as a black female, I'm not sitting there going, white people, like, apologise for your ancestors, apologise for this, apologise. Like, no, like, I'm not saying any of you had anything to do with the past, you know what I mean? But it's them ones where, like, you're in this new generation, like, we have to have a massive impact, because at some point we're not going to be in this world anymore, and we have to move forward and think that there has to be a change, like, that we can't do this anymore. And it, you know, it's 400 years of oppression, so it's not as simple as that. But if we keep, like, you know, politicians under pressure, because they kind of run the show, politicians and, you know, really rich people and stuff who are predominantly white, then, you know, something will happen. Because, you know, obviously I feel like a lot of this was sparked with George Floyd, but then we also can't forget, like, Breonna Taylor.
Exactly.
And there's the whole complex with, I feel like sometimes there's more energy for black males but not for black females. Like, when I say racist complex, it's complex.
That is so true. Like, the most disrespected person in the world is the black woman.
Malcolm X. Malcolm X.
And it's so true. And it's really not. There have been so many black women who've been killed by black girls as well. Like 9, 11, 13-year-old girls I've seen post on Instagram about their stories and their situations. Just completely unwarranted, like, as they all are. But these are kids. How is a kid a threat? Like, in any way? And it's mad. I think the way that black women are treated throughout society is just, like,
it's
shocking. It's awful. People rinse black women,
black culture,
and they want to, you know, take part in, like, the stuff that you guys do with your hair, which comes from, actually, a lot of it's like protective styles. It's for a reason. Obviously, like, appropriation. White people then like, oh my god, that's cool. I'm gonna, like, go on that trend, and I'm gonna be just like the cool white girl who, like, you can tell has, like, black friends and stuff. And it's like,
it's again, this is, you know, this is all down to people's opinions. Like, some people will sit there and be like, hell no, like, I can't mess with, like, you know, like, people of colour with braids, like, people who aren't black with braids, whereas other people might not see any offence in it. And then I personally, I'm, like, in the middle. Like, I don't mind it, I don't see the point of it. Your hair's not supportive of it, even my hair, because I'm a mixed race female, so I personally I wouldn't even do that with my hair, because I don't need a protective hairstyle for my type of hair. Like, if we're talking, when we talk about these type of issues, that's when colorism kicks in, because I'm predominantly black, but then even the prejudice I've experienced is going to be completely different to, like, a fully black woman. And then we start talking about the spectrum of shades and the spectrum of black women and mixed race women, just all these things. This is how, like, you know, racism gets really, really complex, because as well as a female, and not even, if we're just talking racism, of course, as a female, like, it's completely different to when you're a man. Like, I feel like it's less violent, it's more verbal in some cases. But then, even if we're getting into it again, you know, LGBTQ+, if we're getting into that, because, you know, certain people, including black individuals, will, you know, say, you know, Black Lives Matter, which, yeah, Black lives do matter, and we're not saying all lives don't matter, but right now Black lives matter, but they don't have the energy for the LGBTQ community. And then that's the thing, like, you can't say that Black Lives Matter, but then you don't support that community, because especially with Pride Month ending now, because June is Pride Month, you know, there's not been much talk about Pride. There's been a little bit of talk, but Black Lives Matter has heavily been in that, and I don't feel like that the community's, you know, been angry about that or anything, that they've still been heavily supporting their fellow, like, Black LGBTQ people and stuff. So I'm just like, it gets very complex. Like, when you start talking about, like, honestly, you could talk about this subject for months or years on end, as we've been doing as a society, really, if you're thinking about it. But it is very, very, very complex.
And, you know, I've seen so many things on Instagram where it's like Pride wouldn't exist without Black people, and that's why.
Marsha P. Johnson, if you don't know, get to know. Like, if you're talking about a lot of things that we have now, you have to look back at the history, because we're not taught it. There's so many things we're not taught, especially as a Black British individual. We're not taught any of it. Like, it's as if we don't exist. And the first time I heard about Black British people, I was 17 years old doing A-level history, and that was only because I had an amazing, like, liberal teacher who kind of was like, I'm gonna tell you about, like, the truth and stuff. Just kind of talking about education again, I would massively say, for people that want to have the argument that Britain isn't racist, or kind of you don't know about the racist history of Britain, educate yourself in empire. I did it for A-levels, and it was the most mind-blowing thing I've ever studied. Like, had never heard of empire, never even knew it existed, because apparently our education curriculum thinks that 1066 about Hastings, the Tudors, the Tudors and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks are as sufficient as it gets, because, you know, we have no Black British history apparently, and Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks are the only two Black individuals that existed when it comes to, like, Black history. So yeah, empire I would highly, highly recommend studying.
And we're called Great Britain because it colonised everywhere, so that's why we're so great, apparently.
Well, actually, before I ask you a question, you know, just the irony of British culture, because you know, tea is the favourite drink, and it's Chinese and Indian.
Everything's stolen. Everything's stolen.
Curry is also one of the most favourite things, and it's just like, and then when you've got all these, like, laddie, like, football hooligans, especially because those are the type of people at the protests that were kind of run by the EDL and Tommy Robinson, and they're going, nah, Britain first, and I'm thinking, your ancestors are definitely from somewhere in Europe. They definitely weren't settled in Britain, so please humble yourself, because you look foolish. Like, it's hilarious to me when, you know, racist white people are just kind of like, you know, we're the best, we're the superior race. I'm thinking, where do you think you came from? Because we all came from Africa. So unless you want to say that you're, you know, the superior race that started in Africa, then you don't know your history at all, and you need to do it like a genetic test and look at your history and your ancestry, and then get back to realise that your blood is not British. And even the first king, was it King William? I think it was King William. He was from France, so he wasn't even a British man. Like, if we're talking about, like, Britain this, Britain that, there's so many European links and whatever, and I'm just like just people have just really stupid energy, and it's like, come through with your facts if you're gonna really, like, go off on one. But as I was thinking of asking you, is like, you know, as a white female, do you think white people have culture?
No. Our culture's bangers and mash and colonisation, and we've stolen so much. Obviously, like, everything that's cool comes from Black culture. And like I say, the tea thing and curry, and that's all stolen, and it's just a bit like, it's kind of funny because we colonised everywhere. We stole a load of stuff. We tried to steal a lot of other stuff, but undeniably, the Black culture and the Black energy is just too strong to even mask or to, you know, try and control.
I think,
like, it's
when you have this discussion, I feel like people, I don't know, you would never have a white person get up and be like, I'm proud to be white. Exactly. And I think it's because of the history of white people, and I'm not saying that, you know, white people haven't experienced certain things in the history, but Black people are, like, it's literally, prejudice is ingrained in us. Like, slavery was a way to, you know, oppress us. And even now today, it's like modern slavery. It's like you think it's all masked behind
slavery
these laws.
Still exists.
Of course, it's all just masked behind politics, and as if like, oh well, now you can vote, so it's all good. Like just nonsense like that. And it's just a thing where it's completely different, because I'm proud to be black, because you kind of see, like, I could see a fellow black person, and we kind of, it's sad because we have parallel experiences that are really like heartfelt and like gut-wrenching to have. But it's just that's why like it's different when you say you're proud to be black, because you never have a white person say they're proud to be white. And like I think that's why people need to understand it's not a thing of like you should be ashamed to be white. It's not to do with that. It's just the history and the life you've lived. Like, you know, as a white person, you can go back in time to, let's go to the 1600s when slavery started. You have a bloodline that exists. If I go back, it just disappears. And then there's just it doesn't exist. I have no idea. I have an Irish surname. Like a lot of people, you know, if we're talking how like ingrained racism is in society, especially in like British society, a lot of black people have Irish names because of slavery, because slaves took their owners' names. I have no Irish in my blood. I have no Irish in my heritage at all, yet I have an Irish name. Slavery. It's mind blowing, because it's like I don't feel like that name's tainted. That's just the name I know. Like my family are the O'Garro family, but that is the history behind it, and that's just always a thing. And then we have West African ancestry. I know that's where my family on my mum's side, that's where we started, in West Africa. But there's literally West Africa gap, and then we just kind of started existing again. So it's mind boggling in that sense that this is how ingrained racism is into society. Like even like your literal name, that's crazy to think that. So
and kind of when you said about how you don't expect white people to stand up and be like, I'm ashamed.
But absolutely not.
But in the light of, you know, the biggest civil rights movement in history, there has been a lot of white people, I mean, I say a lot, a few, I've seen a few on social media who do say, I'm ashamed to be white. And I think when it comes to that, I'm just like, okay, this is when you need to take a step back and realise you can't make the narrative about yourself.
This is literally what I was going to say. I was like, it's not about you.
Can't make
it's
it
not about
like,
you.
Woe is me, I'm ashamed to be me. Like expecting other people to like, oh babe, oh I'm so sorry. Like, no.
I was literally like in my head as soon as you said that, I was like, it's not about you.
It's not about you. I think it's, if you're having like, for example, obviously I'm white clearly, and all my family are. If I was to go to them and have conversations about this, I think it's a better idea to look at it from obviously like the white perspective.
Yeah, because that's all like, you'd see it from.
And because when you start to talk to especially older people from like, you know, our grandparents or our parents, or I mean the white people's, they would get defensive if you say like it all about all the black people feel like this and black people have gone through this and black people, you know, and if you say white people have inflicted this onto those people, or like actually what white people have done throughout the years, throughout the course of history, then they feel less like defense mechanism. And I think it's a better way to communicate actually how it's our issue as white people and how we can be part of the solution. But in terms of like trying to have a pity party and try and be all like, woe is me, I'm ashamed, no one wants to hear that. In that sense, like, it is not about you. It's not about you feeling like boo-hoo. You know, if we all have the energy that we make out we do towards this, then we are all feeling uncomfortable. We are all feeling... I know a lot of people wouldn't be shocked because like before this happened, I knew racism is still a heavy thing, but there's a lot of people who didn't realise that it was actually so prominent still. So there are going to be elements of people who are shocked, elements of people who feel it very heavy, even though we're white people, but because we've never had to experience that, we never will. So I just feel like you should be feeling uncomfy for a bit.
For a hot second, if you feel uncomfortable, just imagine how we all feel growing up, because this is our lives. Like, this is our lives.
Honestly.
But even the irony of, you know, certain white individuals will say, like, why can't I have a racist experience? Or, like, why can't people be racist to white people? And I'm like, I mean, the fact that the literal term for supposed racism to white people is reverse racism. You can't reverse racism. That's not a concept. We don't just get like an Uno card where it's like, yeah, we're gonna reverse it to you guys. I'm just like, that's how fun. Like that's how you have to see it in that way. And obviously, right now, this is heavily about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm triracial, so I am Black, Asian, and white. It's a very complex mix, but there's so much prejudice in this world, like even for fellow Asian people and like other minority ethnic people, they've also experienced so much ignorance, and I can't speak for them on that part, but it's just them ones where you have to realize that if you're a minority, an ethnic minority, like you will experience prejudice. Like that's just the bleak reality, and I think white people, you need to realize, like regardless of how anti-racist you are, and I was brought up this way, that's great that you were brought up that way, but a lot of people weren't. And a lot of the new gen racists who are like our age, and especially even highly influential ones who go to like Eton, they're going to be our future prime ministers and our future MPs, and they're going to be running the show. And it's just them ones where I think people don't realise how much ignorance there is, and even xenophobia, being really ignorant to foreign students. I even had foreign students who are white, but they're foreign students who've experienced xenophobia, and if you don't know what that means, please look it up. But it's just prejudice for foreigners in summary, and it was just the fact that somehow, like watching these videos or like seeing all these posts, you realise how just messed up the world is, and it's really just deeply disturbing.
It just makes you think, like this particularly raised something, Black Lives Matter. Yeah. It isn't a black people issue. No. It's an issue of humanity. Yeah. It's as I've said earlier, white people need to be stepping up more. We need to be doing more, and I don't understand how people can't view it as an issue of humanity. Yeah. Like there's so many people who just have the whole, if it's not affecting me, then it's not my issue. Yeah. And I don't. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't exist to me, and I don't need to do anything about it. Yeah. But it's like that's so ignorant. Like even one of my family members, I spoke about one of our other friends who experienced a very like casual racist, well, she's experienced several of those, but at uni there was a particular remark about her hair, which is just something that you don't say, and I was explaining it to my brother, and I was just saying how wrong it was and how I can't believe there's people who think like that. And then my brother said to me, oh, well, why does it bother you? And I was like, what do you mean, why does it bother me? Because I can see that's wrong. Yeah. And then I had to say to him, my other brother, his girlfriend is a woman of colour, and I had to say, well, what if it happened to her then? And then my brother goes, oh yeah, well, of course.
This is directly affecting us, so then...
And I'm like, it's such a shame, like, why do we have to think of our black friends when we're thinking of these issues in order to, like, have some empathy? Yeah. It should just be, that's another human being. Yeah. They deserve to have the same life expectancy as me. Yeah. And like, they deserve to have an equal life. Yeah. They don't.
I think I've been saying is, like, which is really, it's quite dark to say, but I was like, especially for American individuals, because of, gun crime and police brutality, especially there, if corona doesn't kill me, then racism will. Because it's such a harsh reality that, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think people have forgotten, especially with how our government has been running it. But it's like, we're in a global pandemic, but it's just like, George Floyd didn't die of corona, even though he tested positive for corona. He died because of police brutality. And then, is it Elijah McClain?
Yes.
That happened last August, and we're only hearing about his name now. Like, it just scares me to think how many hashtags there that don't exist.
Right. Exactly. They're we don't just know the ones about. That we hear about on social media, but they're not just the only ones. Yeah. It's like Will Smith said, racism has never gone away, it's only just been filmed.
Yep, massively. And then even the statistics, obviously we're kind of mixing in between UK and America, because America kind of heavily mixes in with media and its influence on this country. But in the 20 days that after George Floyd's murder, 120 people have been killed by police. It's just mind-blowing, but Yeah.
It is, because where are their names?
Yeah.
When do we hear about their stories?
You start losing your words. It's just like I don't even know what to say at this point. But I think it's important that you've created a platform that you're using to actively speak about these issues. And I've done a couple podcasts with my friend Ellie, who runs a podcast type thing, and it's just as I said right at the beginning, with being an ally, balance it out with social media. It's never about performative and being should I post this? Should I post this to look good? Blah blah. Never think about yourself. It's nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But social media is so powerful, and just using any platform, regardless of how big or small your following is.
Yes.
There's something to it.
So important.
There's always something to it, regardless if you're one voice and you're heard by one person. You're still heard by one person. You could possibly reach out to someone that has no idea of these things, although we're in the modern age. It kind of can't really be hidden behind any of these things, but there might be a certain topic that's even come up in this video today that you had no idea about. Research, educate yourself, because honestly, education is so fundamental. And if you want to have kids, you want to start a family, you want to branch out, have friends and types of things, you guys have to influence these people. And know that the circle you're in is the right circle. There's no ignorance behind it. Do you know what I mean? It's so key that even your family, call them out if they're ignorant. And there's even in the black community, because there are issues and taboo things in the black community that have to be spoken about. As I said, racism's really complex if we're getting really, really into it. There's so many things that have to be spoken about in everyone's own community type thing. But to yourself, with what you're surrounded by, are you really actively making a change? And if you can say that you are, then that's the life you want to live. And if you're not, that is your choice. But this isn't going to change. It will still keep coming up, regardless of the fact that the media isn't massively sharing stuff right now. Trust me, we're still doing it all behind the scenes. Just because it's not in your face on BBC News and stuff, it's still happening, because the change is gonna come. The change will come, regardless of how long it takes. But
I think it's so important, regardless of, like you say, your following, your one voice will make a difference, and you have to understand your influence. And I don't have many followers on Instagram. I had some people who are people of colour who have been thank you for using your voice. And I'm not oh, you're very welcome. It shouldn't even be a thank you thing, because it's just the right thing to do. But it just really makes you think, okay, and I haven't even got a big following, but people are noticing and people are appreciating. And you never even realise to the extent of how many people you're influencing. And so it's really important just to say the stuff that you genuinely believe in and you genuinely feel strongly about, particularly right now. These matters are just so huge, and they always have been, but now I think if people would have posted some of the things that they have been doing, this time last year, without it being coronavirus, it would not have had the same attention. Because people at the moment are so on their phones all the time on
massive
social media.
Screen time is not cute. It's not cute. It's not cute.
But I think everything happens for a reason, and I think although coronavirus has brought a lot of devastation to people and their families, and not disregarding the fact that there's been a lot of deaths and a lot of grief, but I think there is never going to be another time where we collectively in the world are all forced to stay inside, unless you're a key worker, big up you, where we're forced to stay inside, and then naturally during this day and age we'll just be on our laptops, on our phones, on YouTube, and so the attention is just so there, and it's so at the forefront. We wouldn't be in the midst of the biggest civil rights movement in history without coronavirus being a thing.
Crazy. Who would have thought 2020?
But we needed this.
Oh yeah.
That's even more crazy. We needed this for people to even actually face it, because people have been so you post on your Instagram about it, and people who sort of brushed it off, they could give themselves excuses, because they'd be like, oh, I've got to go back to work, or
because
I've got a class or something. But now it's no, you have to listen.
You can't escape it. But even just thinking about Amore O'Garro, there was an uproar about it, because I feel like we're very desensitized. I don't know how many times I've seen especially black men murdered by video,
Yeah.
by the police, by the ones who are supposed to protect the country, you know, serve the country and all that. And, you know, there was an uproar about it, but it was just a thing that it was a trend after a few weeks, because it happened back in February, but it was a thing in March as Corona started really kicking off in this country. But then it wasn't until the George Floyd thing that just something just kicked off. I don't know what it was as well. Even in myself, something about George Floyd set me off. I literally cried for days, and I was like, I don't understand the world we live in. Like, what is going on? Like, how is there a literal video of 8 minutes and 46 seconds of this man just being choked out to death? And it's just the fact that people can watch that, and it's not okay. It's not right. Even Tamir Rice was years ago, and I mean, I don't think there's a video of it, but it's the fact that we were so young when that happened. We were like early teens when that happened. It's the fact that even before I'm a literal legal adult, before I could even vote, I'm hearing all these things of fellow individuals that kind of look like me, or even remind me of my brother or my uncles and stuff, and just being murdered left, right and centre. And then there's videos all like circulating, and I'm like, no child should see that. Like, we shouldn't be so desensitised as a society, the fact that they can just lurk on Twitter and they're not blocked or anything, they're just circulating on Twitter, circulating on Instagram. And yes, we should see it, because it's like, this is the reality, like, this is it. But it's also just like, it's fucked that people like watch literal murders. Like, we've got all at some point witnessed literal murder, and then they get to walk free. They get to walk free, and they're just like, what?
Like the murderers of Breonna Taylor, there's been a law made about her, yet her murderers
are still just walking
around, going Kmart, wherever it is they go in America. Like,
and it's
how does that make sense?
Performative. It's like, what's the point in having Breonna's law to then not even arrest the people who like literally killed her? Like, it
doesn't make sense. No, man.
It's just pure huffing and puffing, because it really is them ones where it's just like, this is so important to have these type of conversations and to put it out on social media. Like, these things are needed. And but at the same time, it's just like, it's when you actually deep the stuff that goes on in the world, it's like, how I just don't get how, like, literal murder, but they're just chilling. Even
that's
Derek Chauvin, whatever his name is, the one who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, literally got $1 million in donations
from
to get his bail.
GoFundMe.
Yep.
Nah.
Like $1 million, and people donated for him to be. I'm thinking, wait, but the literal video is him murdering an individual.
That made me feel sick when I saw that, and I was thinking of all the good causes that you could donate $1 million to.
Yeah.
You donate it to the guy where you have evidence that he's killed someone.
Yeah.
I don't understand. It's oh my days, it's ridiculous. And there's that video of another officer who was there, who was like shadowing.
Oh yeah, there was the 3 of them. 2 of them, it was their 3rd day.
Right.
It was just their 3rd day as police officers, and it's just like.
But he was in a supermarket, and this
I've
girl.
seen this video.
Yeah, she filmed that video, and he was just like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm that guy." I'm like, you're really saying it with no animosity.
No.
You're really just being like, "Yeah, I'm that guy."
Yeah.
As though you should be proud of it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's
you're
mess.
ridiculous. And people saying, like, guys, he can't help what happened. Like, he was just shadowing the officer. Imagine if you were at work and, like, you just started and you had to shadow your boss.
And witness a murder.
And I was like, in terms of, like, your ethical, your moral compass, if I'm a sales assistant and I see my manager killing a person, obviously I'm going to be like,
this is not okay.
Yeah. Like, you know fully inside you that is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be enough to make me, if I was part of the police force, that would be enough to make me question everything that I thought about the police. I would not just stand there and be like, oh yeah, still got the knee on his neck. Oh, let me just stand here. And in the video there's so many people shouting. They're like,
but it's
you're
the
killing
fear.
him, man, you're killing him.
It's the fear. The fear is so instilled, because it's like, if one of them tries to jump in, pow, just shoot him. The American police literally are taught to shoot to kill. And because guns aren't as I guess not vocal, but just existent here. Like, you can't just go pick up a gun. No. Like, you can literally, I don't even think it's 18. You can go to a gun range and get a gun. In America, but obviously here it's a lot more difficult and whatever. But it's crazy to think that people are too scared to even go near the police and stuff. And it's like, they're supposed to protect them, and it's like they're not doing that. So it's just the irony of the whole existence of the police force.
Right.
And there's only one state who've now taken the action of defunding the police and creating different forces, because if you look at the funds, education just keeps going down every year if you look at the trend, but then the police force just keeps going up and up and up and up. And I mean, the police are so heavily corrupt.
Yeah.
It's all corruption. If we're really getting down to the nail and tooth of it all, it's all corrupt.
And if you lessen the importance of education, and then obviously, like you say, fund more for the police, then that's even adding to the corruption, because it's like the people are going to have less of an understanding of what's going on, and then the police are going to have more of a rise of all of the shit that they're doing.
Yeah. So literally 2 days ago, there was a video of a man, and honestly, there must have been like 4 police cars or something. They're all just pointing their gun, and he's literally like this, holding his hands up. He's the one who called the police because there was a robber in the store with a knife. And they're going, drop your weapons, drop your weapons. And he's like, I don't have any weapons. He's the one that called the police. And there's honestly, I think it was like 8 or 9 police officers, and there's a woman recording it behind, and her voice is trembling. And she's saying, just cooperate with them. And it's just so aggravating to think, like, just cooperate. Because even when people cooperate, they still get killed. And she's recording, and she's going, why have you guys got your guns out, blah blah, and they're sitting there just with their guns just out at this back, and he's just standing there like this, and he's like, no, I'm not getting on my knees, I've done nothing, I called you guys. And then obviously they finally realised the issue, that the man is actually just locked himself in the store that he's trying to rob, and then they're just being all pathetic, like, you know, there was just a misunderstanding, all of this, nothing, and that is not okay, that is traumatic to experience. And the fact that they try and justify it, no one needs to pull out 8 guns on a man, and you can't even see weapons on him or nothing. And then even just even like stop and search and stuff. Stop and search is a hot mess in this country. And I have a little brother, he's 3 years younger than me. He's been stopped and searched since he was 13.
No.
Yep 13. And it's terrifying to think, because as I said with the whole weapons thing, but it's the fact that they think they can exert this power because of this stereotype, because he's quite a tall boy, and you know, he fits that gangster stereotype, like just the nonsense, like they just see him and think, yeah, we're gonna stop and search you, no probable cause, and they never do it correctly, they never read them their rights, and they're never usually supposed to just touch them or nothing, yet they're just like, we're gonna stop and search you. Just absolute nonsense. It angers me differently.
And it's racial profiling, and
oh my god,
there's that video of I've forgotten where it was in America, but it was a group of police who came up to this black man who was just like smoking a cigarette. He was with like a couple of white men outside a restaurant, and they put him in cuffs, and they didn't say why, and he wasn't cooperating, and then they were trying to find his ID because they were asking him who he was, and one of his mates was filming it, and he was like, oh, this is going to be really funny when they see my ID, and he was the FBI agent.
He's the FBI agent,
and then they're like,
and they don't know how to react.
Literally, and they're like trying to justify it. They're like, you know, well, you fit the description, and he's like, no, you're racially profiling me. You put me in cuffs for what reason?
And then even just that, there's been this argument, even if the person's guilty, they shouldn't be murdered. I don't even agree with death penalty, to be honest, because I'm like, if this person's murdered someone, regardless of how horrific the crime is, I'm not justifying people's crimes, but then what do we do as a society and as humans? Like, so what, we're supposed to just kill them? So we're supposed to just do the bad thing that they did to themselves? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And it's the fact that I don't care if they're running. If they're not shooting at you, that does not give you the license to kill them. Fight. There has to be other ways. And then even, like, so many reasons that people have died due to police brutality are ridiculous. Like, was it Eric Garner because of a cigarette? Cigarette, because of a loose cigarette. And then even the George Floyd one, because obviously that's so recent, is because of a counterfeit, like $20 bill. A $20 bill. There's just no justification to killing someone regardless if they're guilty. If they're not shooting a gun at you or nothing, unless your life is in literal danger, then you have the right to kill, absolutely. But the amount of times when you look at the statistics, they're not going to be killed. So I'm just like, it really just gets to the point where you're just like, I'm just going to make a noise because I don't even know what to say, but yeah.
But you're so right. It, like, if you're guilty of something, it just does not justify
being murdered for it.
Yeah.
So.
And the amount of time that it takes for you to become a police member in the US
It's
in
less
comparison.
than becoming a barber.
Right. Something that I wanted to say earlier, but I just remembered when we were saying about, you know, obviously not all of the police are bad.
Mm-hmm.
You can't paint them all with the same brush.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's a significant amount of them who do these
fall into
awful
that
things
category. Yeah.
and murder. And it's like if a surgeon messes up really badly, they
That's
are out
it.
of the job.
That's it.
They don't get second chances. So why is it not the same with a police officer whose intent is supposedly to protect people, but obviously black people are in a system where they have to protect themselves from the people who are supposedly protecting. So,
but yeah, with everything you've heard, I feel like if you don't feel like you're educated enough on it, please go out and educate yourself on any of the topics you've spoken about, and just, you know, keep being an active ally.
Exactly.
Just keep being an active ally.
Yeah. And just think about your intentions and how, don't make it about you.
Yeah.
And keep trying to be a part of the solution, and don't be silent, because silence is violence.
Silence is complicit as well.
So thank you for coming on, Amore.
I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it is one of them things though, like we could have this discussion
for 1,000
20
years
more times and have different things to say about
Yeah.
it. So she will be back. And until next time, this is Amore O'Garro, I'm Rachel Eliza, and this is Woman Weapon. Do not forget, woman, you're a weapon.